Whenever we adapt something for the screen, we're doing it because we love the source material, and we want the audience to love it as much as we do, and part of that challenge is preserving that source DNA in the new media. I want to start with a hypothesis here, and that is that graphic novels are actually the hardest kind of media to adapt for two reasons. One, a graphic novel establishes a visual narrative for the reader of the world. So essentially, a reader of a graphic novel, I feel, has created that movie in their mind already, and that is the standard against which the movie will be judged. And secondly, I think fan people are sticklers for detail, whether you adhere to them or deviate from them in the adaptation. And it's kind of a challenge to please that base as well, while broadening it for a wide audience. So I just want to start with that and see how you feel about that hypothesis. Do you think that comics fandom poses a particular challenge that no other media poses when adapting something for film?
You know, if you're going to adapt anything, you know, if it's a novel, if it's a comic, you know, there may be wonderful visuals that are attracting or so on, but at the end of the day, a visual is not a story. At the end of the day, the characters are the stories. And so if you're going to adapt it, be true to the characters. And that doesn't mean you have to give me the same plot. But if you're saying, you know, if it's Marv, it has to be Marv. It cannot, you know, he can't suddenly be like, I'm going to stay in tonight reading and drinking tea. You know, that's not the freaking character. The thing that I loved about Iron Man, never once does it apologize.
Right.
Never once. You know, from start to finish, Downey is playing Stark as Stark. And you are asked to come into the world, and maybe it's because it's the third or fourth or how many films into them building that Avengers world that they're finally comfortable enough to say, the world is established. We no longer have to ask for an excuse for you to be here.
I remember in the early 90s when I first got into Hollywood, I was walking through a friend of mine, Peter Rice's office over at Fox, and like every executive, they have certain scripts stacked up in their bookshelves. And I saw Sin City, a script. So there's a script for Sin City. This was probably like 92 or 93. And he said, yeah, it's an adaptation of the first book, the Marv book. And I thought, whoever does that's going to screw that up. Because they're gonna shoot it like a regular movie, and that's not it. It can't just look like a regular movie just using those themes. That's so tied to the visual element. When I was looking through my comics to see what other movie I might want to do next, I looked at the Sin Cities again, and then it hit me. It's like, oh my God, I know how to do this now. I shoot this all on green, and I can actually make it look like this. Now is the time to do it. I was so excited. I went ahead. I didn't even tell my crew what I was doing. I just said, let's shoot a test. And I kept the books to the side, and I was shooting some actors and lit them hard light. And then I went in Photoshop and doctored them up, and it was just stunning to see it come to life. I called them up in New York, and I said, I'm going to be in New York this Friday. I've got something to show you from Sin City to test. He said, oh, okay, yeah, so I'll meet you at a bar in New York. I was like, honey, we're going to New York. I had no plans to be there. I just snuck in there, showed him in the bar my laptop, and he sees what looks like an image from his book, but then suddenly it's moving and it's an actor. And he was just blown away by that. But then he was very reticent. He said, oh, but now we're going to have to write a script, and we'll send the script into the studio, and then they're going to want notes. And I said, no, it doesn't work like that. In my world, I'll write the script. You don't have to do anything. It's going to be unremarkable because I'm just going to translate it from your page. I'm going to just have your book out, and I'm just going to copy everything I see. And then I'll have it to you in a month. And then in January, it was going to be December. In January, we'll go shoot a test for the opening scene. And then if you like what you see, then we'll settle the rights and continue making the movie. And if you don't, you get to keep the opening as a nice short film you can show your friends. So I made it very easy for him because I just know as an artist, you just don't want to get involved in a Hollywood process. So I try to make it as much as what he was used to as his process as possible.
A novel is a novel. It's not a movie. And a comic is a comic. It's not a movie. I think that the pitfall of comics is that for most executives, at least, they see it as pre-visualization. They think they're looking at their movie, and they're not. What they're looking at is potentially, in the best of all possible worlds, sample visuals, ideas of how they're going to execute. But, you know, again, going back to Whiteout specifically, you couldn't adapt that original story as we wrote it. and sustain it for 90 minutes or 120 minutes. The audience would have been like, it's that guy, and show's over. So, I get leery applying generalizations, because I think there are times also when strict adherence to the source material doesn't serve very well.
I would say 99% of the time.
Well,
I think Sin City I couldn't tell you another book that I would adapt that way. It's just that one was the one that I thought it was already a fully realized work. He already directed it. He already wrote and directed it. He just used a pen instead of a camera, so let's just translate it to camera.
He wrote the noir movie he wanted to see.